everyone talks about how great television is now, and it's pretty good, I gotta say. But it's still television to me. What's the difference between television and a good movie?
Look, Tarantino knows a lot about film, and he knows how to tell a story, but what he doesn't know is that the answer to his question lies in the tale of Severance, Season 2, Episode 7, Chikhai Bardo.
We had chosen not to shoot on film, and I don't know if you remember, I was always adamant that I never thought Severance should be shot on film.
This is Jessica Lee Gagné. Just by looking at her Instagram page, you can tell she's a DP. She's usually the show's cinematographer, but for this episode, she's the director.
But then when this idea of flashbacks came up, I was like, oh crap, I'm the one who has to bring up the fact that I think this should be shot on film.
If you've never seen Severance before, this is all you need to know. Mark and Gemma are in love, and Jessica Lee Gagné had the problem of telling 5 years of their backstory in under 20 minutes.
Being able to do these flashbacks, these memories, to me, I just want it to be as simple as possible, to just like let the story tells itself. You know, I don't like in post adding a look to something to make it look like a flashback. And I was like, what's the most natural and simple way to do this? And basically shooting on film evokes nostalgia right away now for us and for where we are in society now.
And because she shot on film, we currently have some of the best looking footage on TV. But it's not only good looking, it tells a story. We're given next to nothing in dialogue and literally zero in exposition. Yet we learn so much about the characters, more than dialogue could ever deliver. This is the art of visual storytelling. You see, TV thinks you're stupid. Most TV channels think you're stupid, and most TV producers think you're stupid. This is why you may have noticed a lot of modern TV is just bad. A lot of modern TV is just bad. Characters say the same things over and over again just to make sure you understand, or two characters will only have a conversation for the audience's purpose, that they won't actually have a conversation that sounds like two normal people. It's only there to deliver exposition. This isn't only in TV either, it's in pretty much every recent Marvel film. To why they allow the dialogue, you could say they go and they approve it because of time restrictions or budget or understaffed writers' rooms or underpaid writers' rooms, which, you know, while all of that has a factor, they could just pay the writers to, you know, they could just staff their writers' rooms. I think their problem lies deeper. On the topic of not paying your writers and not putting enough writers in the writers' room for not a long enough time, you know, that was all about what the strikes were about recently. I just don't know why you would underpay the writers, or underpay anyone, but especially the writers, because without a screenplay, you don't have anything to show. You know, an architect company doesn't skip out on the blueprint phase. If they skipped out on the blueprint phase, then the building's gonna go wrong. It's a tale literally as old as your mama, because 2,000 years ago, Jesus told the story of the wise man who built his house upon the rock and the foolish man who built his house upon the sand. If you start building from a solid foundation, you've got more chances of your film or TV show becoming a success. Anyway, while all of this has a factor, again, I think the problem lies deeper, and I think public enemy number one is laziness. Laziness to break out the cyclical nature of the same stories, the same structure. Laziness to actually trying to hide the exposition instead of having a main character ask why every 5 minutes to make sure the audience understands everything, instead of letting them try and figure stuff out throughout the story. Jessica Lee Gagné pulls this off perfectly when exploring Gemma's past.
You just made, I thought, some really amazing, beautiful choices in that house. Those scenes in the kitchen, or her sitting alone, or Adam with the crib, you know, trying to break the crib down. The
crib Ben Stiller is talking about is shown here. This is what happens when you let the audience figure something out, and it is genuinely one of the most well-executed things I've seen on TV in a very long time. This level of writing is on par with that of, you know, Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, The Wire. You know, a whole story is shown in just 3 scenes. So we have this scene where Gemma spots something in the corner. It's Gemma and Mark, and Gemma spots something in the corner. Now, we're never told what it is she spots. We are never told. All that Gemma says is, "Who's putting this together, Mr. Handyman?" And they have and Mark replies, oh, I'm actually pretty handy, which is a normal conversation. They have a normal human sounding conversation. We're never told what it is they're talking about. We're only shown it. So we're left to question, is that a crib? Which then leads us to other questions like, is Gemma pregnant? This kind of storytelling actively invites the viewer to be a participant in the story and not just a mindless sloth being fed all the information. It's literally like, right, if a murder mystery gave you all the clues and answers in the first few scenes, it'd be like, well, what's the point of me watching if you're just going to do that? Why should we be subject to lazy exposition in the first few scenes rather than being shown it throughout the story? So this scene creates questions. Then we have a beautiful montage to show the passage of time and development of Gemma and Mark's relationship, which is a whole thing in itself. I could delve into the montage in a whole separate thing, but anyway. And then we arrive at this dinner table scene where there's Mark's sister, Devon. At the table, she pours some wine for herself and then goes to pour some for Gemma, but Gemma puts her hand over the glass. Devon asks, "Are you not drinking?" And Gemma subtly shakes her head. That's it. She shakes her head, cracks a smile, but that's all she does, because that is all that is needed in that scene. This is the art of not only great directing and storytelling, but it's this art of subtle acting by Deachin Lockman and Jen Tullock. She shakes her head and smiles, and then Devon's reaction is shown. In that moment, everybody knows what's going down, and the pennies drop for everybody at the exact same time. Devon now knows Gemma is pregnant. Gemma knows that Devon knows she's pregnant, and we as the audience have had our question answered, and we now know that yes, Gemma is pregnant. That was a crib. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. It literally doesn't. This is the art of visual storytelling. This is the whole thing about visual storytelling. The audience is allowed to work stuff out. It would have been so much easier, so less time consuming and much less expensive if Gemma had just stood up at the table and been like, "Guys, I want to make an announcement. I'm pregnant." It would have been so much easier. But that is the coward's way out, and unfortunately it's the way out that many modern TV shows and films take. Why? Because they're lazy. I said before that this is the same level of writing as Breaking Bad, and here's why. If you've never watched Breaking Bad before, all you need to know is that this is Mike, and he's a wanted drug dealer trying to get out of the game, and he's in a park with his granddaughter. Mike is so close to exiting the drug dealing circle, and then what happens? He gets a phone call, the DEA are coming for him right now, and then the police turn up at the park. All Mike does, all he does is stand up and go to say something to his granddaughter, but he doesn't. He holds back. And that is all that is needed. That is all that is needed to do in order for us to know exactly how much danger Mike is in. If he speaks, his life, his granddaughter, his future, her future, Mike's drug-dealing friends' futures are all at stake. From what was a nice, quiet scene, in an instant, it's turned on its head, and Mike is in the most danger he's ever been throughout the whole series. He can't have both worlds of a future with his granddaughter and a future for himself. And, I don't need to explain that to you. Breaking Bad doesn't need to explain that to you, because we can see it for ourselves. That is the beauty of visual storytelling. We can emotionally connect with the characters more because nothing's being said, but it's like a telepathic connection between the viewer and the character. The pennies dropping at the exact same time. And that requires so much effort. That requires so much effort that so many TV shows aren't willing to do, but it's so worth it. We don't need to be told why he can't call out to Kaylee, his granddaughter, and say, "Kaylee, run!" Like you would hear in most nonsensical action films or TV shows nowadays. We don't need any of that, because we're shown it all. The audience aren't treated like idiots. We're being treated like an active participant.
Also, some of this was purely intuitive, and I feel like as filmmakers, that's what happens, right? You just try and follow your intuition and what feels right.
To take a chance with something and to go with your intuition, for me, is something that I've gotten from working with you.
I guess I'm not afraid of doing bold things, for sure.
Now, I understand that producers and studio executives and whatever are in the business of making money, but the exact thing they want is lying in the exact thing they're not doing. The ratings, the viewership, the money. If Marvel or any other film or TV show wants to improve their ratings, they should be focused on improving the quality of their writing. If the writing is good, it makes it easier for every department in the production team. But if they only care about the money, which they do, the quality of the stuff they put out will only get worse and worse. They take the advantage that they've got a guaranteed profit coming in the wrong way. They don't spend more time and money on the budget or the quality of the writing. They say, let's do this like we've always done it, and in as little time as possible. If they care about the artistic integrity of what they're producing, they'll make bold choices like Severance does. You know, granted, it does help when you have a company valued at $3 trillion behind you, but money can't buy genuine interest from viewers. That comes from producing quality content. I see a new wave of filmmaking coming and a new wave of bold choices being taken by Apple because they have a significant advantage over everybody else in the game. You know, they have the money, they have the time, they have the brand, they have their own platform, so they don't have to adhere to anybody else but themselves. So let's just hope that they keep investing in quality talent and that they don't drop their quality because it's convenient. The difference between television and a good movie isn't the cameos, it isn't how well known the IP is, and it isn't even how famous or respected the director might be. It all comes down to if someone is willing to take the time and a chance to follow their instinct and make something that we're going to remember in 30 years' time.
When the season's over, I need to walk away with more than just the soap opera.